began my career in the technology industry in the 1990s, I was one of about 5 women in an office of 1,500 men. And I thought that was normal because that was the only experience I'd ever had before. And in those days, I was told things that you couldn't say now, like, you'll never have a career because you're a woman. You'll never have a career because you're not technical. I had a French degree where everybody else had a maths or a science degree. And so quite quickly, I realized that if I was going to develop a career in the technology industry, I'd need to do it in a different way. And so I developed my people skills. So I developed my skills of leading teams, leading clients, and looking at, from a business point of view, how are things working and what can be improved. I'm Jude Jennison. I'm the author of the book Opus, The Hidden Dynamics of Team Performance. And today I'm going to share with you the 12 hidden dynamics of team performance that I've identified through my working with clients and teams over the last 3 decades. When I left my corporate career 10 years ago, I set up a business working with a herd of horses to explore non-verbal communication and behavior. Now, bear with me, because if you've not come across this before, it may sound rather strange, but horses reveal your non-verbal communication. So what you're thinking, what you're feeling, your intentions, your energy, your emotions, all of that gets revealed in the presence of horses. And what horses want is really what people want is, are you clear about where you're going? And is there a balance with a strong relationship? So it's about balancing results and relationships. So let's explore the hidden dynamics that occur in a team. Before we do that, I want to look at why projects and teams fail. There are 3 primary reasons why projects and teams fail. And the research shows that between 60 and 80% of projects and teams fail. And that's due to high workloads, which increase our stress levels, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with, changing priorities that cause confusion. And whenever there is change, there is greater uncertainty. And when there is uncertainty, priorities can often change very quickly. And that does cause a level of chaos and confusion in teams and can cause them to get misaligned. And then the third one is that the frustration of that misalignment results in unresolved differences of opinion that cause tension and division in teams. And unless we address those 3 things, projects and teams will continue to fail. But underneath the surface of all of this, the unconscious non-verbal behaviors that we all exhibit without realizing it cause hidden dynamics that impact our team performance, our communication, and hinder our relationships. And our non-verbal behavior is nearly always unconscious, but it drives our actions and our impact. And if we're to really understand what's going on under the surface in teams, we need to start paying attention to our non-verbal behavior. And I'm going to share with you some of the 12 hidden dynamics that are occurring in every single team today. And these are things that are typically not covered in leadership training. So our default patterns of behavior often don't change. So first of all, I want you to think about a relationship that's either challenging or in conflict. And think about, what do you think and feel about that person, and how does it influence how you interact with them? And this is what we're going to be looking at today, because it's rarely the individuals within a team who are not performing, but it's often the relationships within the individuals in the team that cause the challenges and the conflict. And it's what we're thinking and feeling about those people that influences our interactions. So if you think that somebody is going to be difficult, you're more likely to approach them with the energy of expecting that, and they will sense and feel that from you and respond accordingly. Now, of course, remember I said this is largely unconscious, and that's why I want to reveal it today, so that you can start thinking about what are some of the things that you need to pay attention to with those relationships in that team, so that you can resolve some of those tricky relationships and be more conscious about your interactions and do them in a more positive way. So I've broken the 12 hidden dynamics into 4 subsets of 3. And the first one I'm going to look at is how the team is organized. So there are 3 primary roles within a team: leading from the front, leading from the middle, and leading from the back. Let's take each one of these in turn. Leading from the front is about being clear about where we're going. What's the vision? What are the objectives? What's the strategy? What is it that we're trying to execute? And is everybody clear about what we're asking them to do? That's what I call leading from the front role. And that is concerned with clarity. Leading from the middle is where the majority of people will sit in an organization. And that's concerned with execution. How are we going to get there? So in order to know what there is, we need that clarity up front of what is it we're trying to do, so that as a team we can start to look at how do we connect, how do we support each other, how do we collaborate, how do we communicate effectively, and how do we align and execute together. And that's often where it goes wrong, because that's the tricky piece. I remember when I talked about the challenges of teams and why they fail. Often they fail because of the execution, because we're not aligned, because teams get frustrated, because there are changing and competing priorities. So we need to be able to resolve that. And leading from the back is about holding the team accountable. So it's about identifying when we're on track and when we're off track. So when we lead from the back, we have sight usually across the whole organization or the whole team. So we can see who's committed, who's not, who's on track, who's off track, where have we got compliance, where have we got risks and issues, what are the things that we need to identify, and what do we need to pay attention to. So that's what I mean by accountability. It's how we stay on track. And if any one of those 3 roles is missing in a team, if there's a lack of clarity, then the team will just execute all over the place. If there's absolute clarity, but there's no accountability, then people will get distracted and go off in different directions and get confused by changing priorities, and the execution will slow down. And so it'll either be a bit wobbly and all over the place, or it will go off in tangents. So the accountability is really important to make sure that you keep that team together and executing and moving forward together. So that's the organization of the team. The second subset of 3 hidden dynamics is around team vitality. And it's really essential that we manage the appropriate levels of energy and communicate effectively to maintain our vitality in the team. Now, one of the things that I often say is that well-being is a leadership issue, because well-being is about how do we manage our stress levels? How do we manage the pace that has been set by the team and by the organization? How do we maintain our own personal well-being? And how do we manage the well-being of the team and the whole organization in our ability to achieve our results? Because if you've got high level of stress or mental health issues in the organization, you cannot possibly achieve what you want to achieve. So well-being is absolutely crucial. And what we tend to do with well-being is we stick sticking plaster on issues. So we will implement mindfulness courses for people who are under pressure, where what we really need to be doing is, from a leadership point of view, say, what are the priorities, so that accepting there will be peak periods of pressure, but it's not acceptable for it to permanently be tipping people over the edge into overwhelm. So that is a leadership issue that we need to be paying attention to. And all of that is happening in the team. And it's not unusual for someone to go off sick suddenly with stress. And when we do that, it's because we've not paid attention to the well-being in the team. Our energy and emotions also influence our decision making and how vital the team, the levels of vitality in the team. So if we are under pressure, often we tend to go faster. And when we go faster, we eventually burn out. So we need to be able to manage the pace so that it's the appropriate pace for what we need to do. There will always be peak periods. So whatever your industry is or your organization is, whether it's if you're in finance, there's month end and quarter end and year end, which will always generate higher volumes of work. And we know about those peak periods and we can plan for them. With our energy, we also can inject enthusiasm. So I always say nobody wants to sit in a boring meeting, and yet many of us do. So if ever you find yourself sitting in a boring meeting, reflect on what is it you want to do? Do you want to inject some humor? Do you want to inject some energy and enthusiasm? Or do you want to quietly say, actually, I'm not needed here? So whatever is happening that is affecting our energy levels and our emotions is feedback and information for us that we can use in our decision making. And then the third thing that generates vitality in the team is conversation. Now, when I'm talking about non-verbal behavior, you may wonder why conversation is important. Well, it's because the non-verbal often goes unsaid. And so all of the things that are not being spoken to in a team, people are sensing them, they're feeling them, and they're having an impact. And so we need to pay attention to what's not being said and what are the differences of opinion that are causing us to either not be aligned or causing us to disconnect and break down relationships. We need to start having a better quality of conversation in order to create that vitality in the team and create that alignment. And then the third subset of 3 is about understanding the team. And within that, there are 3 levels of awareness that enable us to understand the team dynamics and also help us improve decision making. And the first one is looking at understanding yourself. So knowing, what are you thinking and feeling and doing at any given point? And how does that impact the team? So if you're bored and you switch off in a meeting, it may rub off onto your colleague, and then it rubs off onto more people, and suddenly everybody's sitting in a boring meeting. So what you're thinking and feeling and doing can have an impact. If you are super excited about a project and nobody else is, then that excitement might not rub off onto your colleagues. So you may need to tone down your excitement and look at how do you bring them with you. So paying attention to what you're thinking and feeling and doing is absolutely critical. We also need to pay attention to the relationships, to look at what are the relationships in the team that are strong and which are the ones that need more attention. And what we have a tendency to do is spend more time with the people that we like or the people that we're aligned with. And what we need to be able to do is spend more time with where those relationships are just slightly more tricky, or we're not aligned, or we've got differences of opinion, or maybe there's a disconnect. That's where we need to put more attention, and we need to understand the impact of not doing that and then pay more attention so that we can continually refine and improve the relationships and improve, therefore, the whole team dynamics. And then the third place of understanding and awareness is the wider field. So that's looking at the bigger picture. That's looking at the whole team rather than your relationship with one person in it on an individual basis, but looking at the whole team. So really paying attention and understanding what is the energy and the emotional field within the team. What are your competitors thinking and saying and doing? What's the market thinking, saying and doing? What are your clients thinking, saying and doing? So there's so much to pay attention to in the bigger picture. Market conditions, the economic conditions, new rules and regulations, government initiatives, global economics, climate change, all of these things have an impact on our teams, and we need to pay attention to what are the things that I need to include in my role and in my relationships and in my team so that we are continually paying attention and aware of where we need to go next. And then the final three hidden dynamics are around the unconscious stories that either create cohesion or division in the team. And the reason why they create cohesion or division is because they're largely unconscious. So let me take these three in turn. So the first one is boundaries. And it's really, really important that we have our own boundaries, but we also have team boundaries. And those boundaries will influence how we relate to each other, the decisions that we make. And boundaries are concerned with what are we saying yes to and what are we saying no to? What's okay for me and what's okay for you? And we may have different boundaries, and we will have different boundaries. So if you look at something like personal space, because it's an easy one, that is one where we all have a slightly different personal space, and particularly at the moment following COVID-19, where some people, where what would have been a normal personal space is now wider. For some people it's 1 meter, for others it's 2 meters, for others it's okay to shake hands, for others it's not okay. And so we're all navigating different boundaries, and usually we don't talk about them. So we're trying to second guess, is it okay to shake somebody's hand now? Is it okay to go into the office without a mask? Those are things that we're trying to second guess. And because we're not having conversations about them, then they're influencing how we show up, and they can also create a level of awkwardness. So one of the things that we need to do is be really clear about our boundaries. And I think we're learning to do that more now as a result of COVID-19, but we need to do it not just in relationship to the pandemic, but in relationship to each other, into our working conditions. What's an okay level of workload? What's an okay level of stress for you? It might be very different from what's okay for me. And so we need to be aware of that. And then, of course, the next one then is the assumptions that we're making. And often we assume that if it's okay for me to do something in a particular way, I might assume that it's okay for you, and it might not be. And so what then tends to happen is we make assumptions about whether people are being difficult or not, or whether we're aligned or not. For example, if you've had a disagreement with somebody in the past, you may assume that next time you meet with them, you're going to disagree again. And so you're more likely to go on the defensive or on the offensive. And even if we're just fine-tuning here, those assumptions will influence the levels of connection that we've got, and therefore the quality of our communication. And when you multiply that up in all of the relationships within the team, those assumptions, unless we explore them together, and we mostly don't, those assumptions will influence those relationships. And then the final one is looking at your intentions. We often are not intentional. So when you go into a meeting, what's your intention? What is the outcome that you want to create? And is that an outcome that is shared by everybody? And is everybody in agreement on what that is? Because if you've all got different intentions within the team, then you need to start looking at how do you align before you can even start to look at how you stay focused to make that intention happen. So how you collaborate together is going to be based on understanding those hidden dynamics in your team. If you're not aware of those and there's some disconnection, or there's a lack of alignment, or there's just it just doesn't feel like it's completely in flow, one of those hidden dynamics is a really great place to start exploring. Because if you pick one of those, you can significantly improve the quality of your relationships. And once every relationship in the team is working really well, only then will you get the team performance that you really want. I hope that has been useful for you. I'm Jude Jennison, founder of Leaders by Nature and author of the book Opus, The Hidden Dynamics of Team Performance.